Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of your six-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesmana, coming to you on a Thursday, May 8th. LA Galaxy getting ready to take on their MLS Cup competitors. That's right, a rematch of the 2024 MLS Cup, only this time in New York. It will be the New York Red Bulls and the LA Galaxy, but your LA Galaxy, winless since the start of the season in the league, now have to face off against the New York Red Bulls, it looks like, without any designated players. We're going to update you on injuries and tell you what to expect from this New York game, and also what's going on with the LA Galaxy, including press conferences and all the other fun stuff. To help me do all that, we're glad to have him back on the show. It is one of our favorites. It's Alex El Nino Ruiz. Alex, how's it going, buddy?
Going good. I mean, aside from, watching LA Galaxy soccer right now, life seems to be pretty good. I'm honestly still astounded of what we saw on Sunday Night Soccer.
Right.
I don't think I'll ever see anything in my life similar to what I saw that night. The fact that they didn't allow Sporting Kansas City to have a single shot all game long and still end up losing the game. Like, I don't know how many generations down my family tree I will have to go down in order to see something similar like that again.
That's sort of the thing. I said it a little bit at the beginning, but it does seem just absolutely crazy to me that we witnessed something, and I think all the reporters are sort of in the same spot on this, Alex, which is I'm not sure I can explain it. I think people were saying that we were trying to give the LA Galaxy a pass on it just because on Monday's show we were sort of looking at the extraordinary. I mean, if the LA Galaxy, just imagine if the LA Galaxy scored one goal and Sporting Kansas City didn't, we would be talking about how for the first time ever in MLS history, or in LA Galaxy history, they didn't allow a single shot ever, the entire game, not a shot. And it would have been such this like rallying cry, but the fact that there was an own goal in the 13th minute and it just changes the narrative. And then watching all the chances go by the wayside, it was Looney Tunes.
Very much Looney Tunes. I mean, there's been so many things that have gone on for the LA Galaxy in so many different ways this year. Like, every week feels like I'm writing a new headline on how they've lost the game and they continuing to lose. Like, right now we're at the point where they're discovering new ways how to lose. And look, it sucks for the team knowing that a lot of the guys who won the championship are still on this roster. You still have that core of Peck and Paintsill, Yoshida, right? Garces, McCarthy in goal. That core is still here. It's not like this is a completely different team. And in some aspects, obviously, you do miss the guys who departed. But at the same time, that core is still there. And I'm just so astonished of what we're watching right now. I mean, I can't really think of any team across all American sports that, have struggled this bad after, winning the championship the year prior.
Yeah, it is. That is one of the crazy turnabouts. So, quite honestly, Alex, we shouldn't be in this position, right? After the LA Galaxy have a winning season, they go in and win MLS Cup. They're the champions, defending champions. I mean, really, it should be back to, even with the changes that they had and some of the things that are going on, it should have gone back to, maybe more business as usual for the LA Galaxy, which means, winning games, doing stuff. We knew that there was was going to be sort of a downtick with the people who left, and Greg Vanney actually had some interesting takes on that on Wednesday, and we're going to get into sort of the pieces that he's been missing and what's been happening with that. So we'll talk about that. And before we get any further, though, I want to talk to everybody. If you know that Alex is currently frozen over here on the live stream, it is because that is a picture. And the reason that is a picture is because Bill Gates, in his ever-wondering wisdom there, decided that Skype was going to go away. And I've told you for years that Skype has been sort of one of those broadcast standards that's been going for a really long time. People have just recently started moving away from it. But there's a technology called NDI that basically we use to import video in whenever we're doing these calls. And so Skype died, and NDI, trying to turn NDI onto Teams, turned out to be about a 7-hour challenge for me today, one of which I did not complete. So we're stuck a little bit. Alex is still going to join us with the audio, but for right now and for this show, and hopefully for this show only, because I have to get it fixed by Monday, it will be a static picture for Alex. He's not being held hostage. Nobody's threatening your life, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. Just wanted to check. So Alex is okay, but he's nice enough to join us in what has been, I'd say, a rather entertaining week for LA Galaxy fans. If you like the sad parts of all of that, the big news obviously is the updates and the injuries to Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsel. That was, Alex, in my mind, the story of the game on Sunday, outside of the fact that you lose without allowing a shot. The story of the game is LA Galaxy are healthy at the beginning of the game. By the end of the game, they have no designated players. And for a team that has been stressing when we get healthy, they were healthy for about 70-something minutes. And that's if you just leave out the part where Ricky Puig is still not available, probably until August, September, or somewhere in there. So that was big for me. What was Greg Vanney's update for both Joseph Paintsel and Gabriel Peck?
Yeah, so as some of our listeners might know, obviously this week starts the East road trip where they'll be heading out to New York this Saturday, and then they'll be playing midweek against Philadelphia. So, with Joseph Paintsel and Gabriel Peck's availability, we got an update from Greg saying that in the case of Gabriel Peck, it's a day-to-day kind of issue. He'll make the road trip. There is a slight possibility he will play in Philadelphia. However, with Joseph Paintsel, looks like he's going to be out at least 10 days, so he won't play during this road trip. So the Galaxy, in their toughest stretch of the season so far, I think going out, traveling all those miles, playing those Eastern Conference teams, they're going to be without designated players, and it's going to be a really tough stretch for the LA Galaxy. But you know what? That's the business, and they just have to deal with the cards that they're dealt with right now.
Yeah, it is. We'll go back to the designated player minutes and everything that I've been tracking so far. I just would like to sort of put this into stark contrast of what it was last year versus what it is this year. Now, with Ricky Puig out, you would be looking, if Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsel played all their minutes, at a 66% availability rate for the LA Galaxy for their designated players. And we have made the argument, and I think anybody in MLS knows this argument to be true, that as your designated players play, so does your team, right? And so with Ricky Puig out, the Galaxy already knew they were missing a big portion of that. They were going to at least miss a third of the total available minutes, just with Ricky Puig probably not going to be able to play until later this year, right? So you're already counting on that. Then there were injuries to Joseph Paintsel. Gabriel Peck has played every game but one so far, and now he's looking at missing this game coming up against New York. But so far, out of 2,970 total minutes available to the designated players this year, the LA Galaxy's DPs have played 1,322, which is less than 45% of the total available minutes. Whenever we go over to our chart from last year, we can see that in 2024, through the entire season, the entire regular season, the LA Galaxy had 82.5% total available minutes for their designated players. You want to go back to 2023, which was a horrible year, and you had the Javier Hernandez season-ending injury. So maybe you can draw lines between 2023 and 2025, Alex. 48.3% total available minutes for the LA Galaxy in 2023. So right now at 44.5%, and likely to plummet this weekend whenever the LA Galaxy, more than likely, and unless there's some major turnaround for Gabriel Peck, which I believe they're calling it like a hip pointer. Is that correct?
Yeah, Greg mentioned it was a hip issue, and again, this probably goes back to the CONCACAF Champions League game against Tigres where this kind of started. He got that tackle up from Angulo, and he was down for a while, and since then Gabriel Peck's kind of had that lingering issue there. So that's still kind of comes from that game back in the semifinal round, or excuse me, quarterfinal round against Tigres.
Yeah, it is. So all things pointing back to that. And now you have unlikely availability for Gabriel Peck. So that raises a lot of questions for the LA Galaxy just off the top. And certainly the question mark has been, when will the LA Galaxy win a game? They could be winless in 14 here real quick if the LA Galaxy aren't careful. Looking at the next 3 games that they have, so New York Red Bulls coming up, and then you have Philadelphia midweek. So the LA Galaxy staying on the East Coast will actually stay either in New York or in Philadelphia there, and we'll play that game and then travel back after that, and then they'll have El Tráfico right after that. So those are the next 3 games for the LA Galaxy. Not exactly friendly confines there whenever you look at what could possibly happen, but there's a good chance now, especially with the injuries, Alex. I mean, I guess there could be an argument that Gabriel Peck hasn't exactly been putting in MVP type numbers, so perhaps losing him won't completely kill you, except that I think that in the last 2 games, the LA Galaxy have probably had their most dangerous offense, despite not really scoring a lot of goals. And so now you're going to move away those pieces, and Greg Vanney, who's played, I believe, 11 different lineups in 11 different games, is now probably going to have a 12th different lineup in 12 games. It seems almost unsustainable at this point.
Yeah, honestly, it's, when you talk about that, the fact that he's playing 11 different lineups in 11 different games is insane to me. I mean, the injuries, the player availability issues, and now just this issue with the DPs. I mean, the Galaxy just can't find a rhythm at all this season. And I know, Josh, we've talked about this among, the media. Like, there have been moments where, in games where we feel like there's momentum, right? Where we feel like there's something they can build on, but they're never able to build on it. And look, if they had gotten the result, against Kansas City, would have been like, great, this is something to build on. You shut down SKC. You're not able to do that. And now in the game where against SKC, where they, chance creation wise, they played pretty good. They looked like, dangerous. They just were missing that final clinical finish. Now you kind of just go back to like, okay, what can we do now? I mean, are we going to really play Julian Alde and Mauricio Cuevas as our wingers?
I know.
Against the Red Bulls?
Yeah.
Like that's the point where we're at right now. And, this is going to be a real tough test for Greg. And I think a real kind of moment to show the confidence he has in the players, like Alde, like Cuevas, who they've been on this roster now for a season or 2. They're seasoned within how Greg wants to play, and it's all about if they can execute, if they can, be able to, produce something, obviously without your DPs. So it's going to be a real test of faith this road trip, because you're really going to have to put a lot of responsibilities on guys that maybe aren't used to that.
That is sort of the listen. It sounds like the LA Galaxy are calling all hands on deck for this one, right? I would expect that you're going to see guys like Ruben Ramos Jr. I think you're going to see Mauricio Cuevas. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Mauricio Cuevas is one of the starting wingers whenever it starts. What they decide to do and where they think they're strongest depends on whether or not Diego Fagundez stays in the middle, possibly playing next to Marco Reus, because you can have an intact midfield if you keep Fagundez and Reus together with Cerrillo there, right? That's something that you could possibly do. You could also kick Fagundez out to the left side and bring Sanabria in with Cerrillo. Not something that I think has worked all that well this year, but at least you still have Marco Reus in there. So there's a little bit of options in there, but for me, and I've been on this train for a little while now, Julian Aude has to come in and start playing. And I don't know if he's going to play winger. I don't know if he's going to play, Greg can go to 5 in the back as well. If it's something that they think that would be, more prudent for them. He was pretty coy in terms of how he was going to create the goals. Damian Calhoun was asking him, and Greg acknowledged, he goes, I'm trying not to answer your question, so I'm just going to talk around in circles. He was like, I don't want to give you guys, I don't want to tip off what I'm trying to put together. Not that I think we can't guess it, but the bottom line is, if the Red Bulls don't know, don't have a great idea and have to prepare for multiple things, perhaps. Maybe that's a little more confusing for their preparation than anything else. But bottom line is that they're probably going to come up against something like either Julian Aude at a wing or Diego Fagundez on that left wing. And then maybe guys like Elijah Wynder, I think, will also be back in this game. Like I said, Harbor Miller, Ruben Ramos Jr., Elijah Wynder, Mauricio Cuevas, Ruben Ramos Jr., I think you're going to get, but Parente is certainly a question there as well. Whether or not you can bring him.
You forgot Nascimento.
Nascimento.
We haven't seen that guy in a while.
Well, I mean, he did play in the last game, which was I don't know. Didn't he play like in the latter stages of the Sporting Kansas City game? I remember seeing him being like, oh yeah, look, they're actually going to get maybe some minutes on him, and maybe there's actually some time there. I don't know yet. I don't know about Nascimento. I don't know about Sanabria. I think Sanabria plays better as a 6. What do you sort of see with some of the younger kids that have needed time to develop and maybe gotten some time, maybe not gotten some time?
Yeah, I mean, look, the U22s, Julian Alde, Nascimento, and Sanabria, they have to at least contribute a little bit. And look, the U22 roster slot for most players who fit in that category across MLS, that's very much a boom or bust kind of player. You're either going to have players who contribute right away or players who take a while to do so and, maybe take a couple of years to really get into real consistent production. But I mean, the state of the LA Galaxy right now, like you need those 3 guys to start playing. I mean, you have Nascimento on loan from, I believe, Botafogo, big club in Brazil, right? That's a team with a lot of pedigree. This is a guy who, was supposed to be the next big thing at that club, but he's stagnated because, the team has gone in different ambitious directions. So he's looking to kind of reestablish and discover himself as a player. You have Sanabria, the $5 million signing from Uruguay. Look, the Galaxy needed players in the trenches. They need guys who can be able to move the ball. They need guys who can cover a lot of ground. And Cerrillo has done a lot of that himself this year, and we really need Sanabria to really kind of show that a bit more because a lot of the time it feels like he's shy from the ball. Compared to Cerrillo, who averages around like 60, 70 touches a game. You have Sanabria at maybe 30, 42, right? So that's a big difference right there. And I'm with you, Josh, on the Julian Alde train. I really am high on this kid. I really think he can add that extra spark on the left wing.
Right.
John Nelson's been really good. There's not much negative to say about him, but you kind of need an extra spark, an extra oomph, right? And I think Julian Alde is more capable of providing that than John Nelson. I mean, you're getting desperate now at this point. We're about to reach the halfway point, and the Galaxy have yet to win a game. So you got to throw something out there, right, to relight that spark for the LA Galaxy and start scoring some goals.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in a lot of ways, against a team that's going to be high pressing and is going to look for its chances to sort of break in behind you. Sometimes the best defense on that is to sort of sit back a little bit, and maybe John Nelson is the better attacker or better defender for that. So, but I'm sort of with you. You need to score goals. I've been more disappointed with the offense this year than the defense. I'm not saying the defense hasn't had its problems, but if the offense could score a couple goals and actually give the defense a lead, I actually feel like the defense would probably be pretty good. It hasn't been good enough, and like you said, they're getting desperate. It's spaghetti time. Throw it against the wall, see what sticks. I'd also like to say, chat room reminded me, Tucker Leply. That was a name that we were calling at the beginning of the year over and over again. I mean, why is it? Tucker Leply could very easily start it, maybe a left wing or come inside a little bit and help. So I think there's options there. I'm concerned. By the way, $30 super chat from executive producer Herb, always nice. Hi, Josh. Hi, Alex. Herb says, with Skype dead, Josh, are you still the right guy to keep leading this podcast? Just kidding. Just kidding. How bad is the Apple deal that it prompted the Fox deal plus EAFC live games? Listen, we've known. I think if you didn't know, the game that will be played on Saturday will be broadcast over EA Sports Network, right? So basically the EAFC live games that they have. So you're going to be able to pick that up. There's also this Fox deal, a local Fox deal that basically is going to show delayed games. So the game will be played on Saturday, and the next Friday you can watch the game again if you wanted to over the air. I don't. One is that can't cost any money. There's no way Fox is like paying for that. It has to be like zero. It has to just be like, hey, you're gonna get something out of this because you're gonna get see games over the air, right? Without a paywall or anything like that. But I think we've known that with the Apple deal that they're looking to get more revenue and that teams are looking to get more revenue from that than just what they're getting from overall in the Apple deal. So I think you're seeing these little sort of deals that are being put in there. And so, hey, if it increases the fan base, if it does all the things that I don't really have an issue with it. But I mean, I don't know. People keep getting, I think, more upset, Alex, right now that they're like, the Galaxy shouldn't be showing any of their games extra outside of what they already are required to with how they've been playing. Is there a saving grace in any of these new broadcast deals for the Galaxy?
I mean, you're just trying to get more people into the tent of, MLS soccer here in Southern California. I think LAFC is also doing a similar deal with Fox as well,
Yes.
where they're also, playing delayed broadcast games. But yeah, at this point, the Apple TV's deal is very unique, given that MLS right now at the moment is the only sports league where all games are on a streaming platform where a paywall to watch every single game. Obviously, you had local networks, local sports networks, and you have your national networks that broadcast games. So, I mean, MLS is trailblazing this, but I don't know if MLS is the right league to be leading this charge, if you know what I mean, given that the fact that it's a very niche league.
Right.
Like, it's not, compared to the NFL, NBA, it's nowhere near that. It's more of a, maybe NHL, MLB kind of there, but maybe not at that same level. So yeah, interesting to see that, they're doing this and they're streaming the game on the EAFC mobile app. So, I mean, I don't know how many people still play that app, play that game. It's been a while since, I've been enticed. I'm a younger generation guy who's on my phone all the time, so I haven't been enticed by any of the new EA games. But hey, I mean, do what you got to do to spread the word of soccer. So, interesting move, but I don't think it's going to move pins and needles and create a large fan base flocking over to Apple TV.
And I would like to take everybody back before the Apple deal as well. It's not like local broadcasting was really like doing the best job that you wanted it to do either, right? So like people weren't watching Galaxy games then, and it was hard to find, and there were blackouts, and so all of a sudden you got into these things where you couldn't find games. So in terms of finding games, I've said it's never been better, right? Because I know where every single game is in the league, Alex, every single time. In fact, I get kind of ticked off whenever there's like one of these outside competitions and we're supposed to go find the game. I'm like, well, why can't it just be on MLS Season Pass? Like that's where I go for everything. And it would be nice if that was still the case. But having said that, it's the easiest once you are inside of the wall, once you're behind the paywall, it's the easiest way to watch the LA Galaxy. It's been the easiest it's ever been. And so, in terms of what I like, hey, that's easy. It's easiest to watch any game ever. The fact that there are also 15 games every weekend is just absolutely crazy bonkers. I am lucky if I watch like 2. With it anymore, and there's just so many games, and trying to keep up with the league and watch the league, especially on East Coast time, it's difficult. So it'd be really cool if eventually Apple would get one of those maybe more storied platforms, whether it's the NBA or something like that, and then it would be, hey, come join this sports network that we have that shows all the NBA games here and all the MLS games. It's like getting more people under the tent behind the paywall, but you get both of it with everything else. I know with I will never forget, somebody said this. They're like, and it was probably on social media, and I'm probably stealing from somebody, but they're we wanted a la carte pricing for cable because there were so many things we weren't watching. Right, there's so many channels that you're not doing. Nobody told us that it would be there were so many a la cartes. That's what the whole thing is. It's like how many different streaming services do you have to subscribe to? And the answer is like all of them. And so now it's probably more expensive than it ever was with cable. So. It's just in terms of what it's going on and what the TV looks like, I think this is sort of the best it's going to be for a little while. And listen, Major League Baseball is having problems with their regional networks, right? So yeah, it's not just an MLS problem. This is a sports problem trying to figure it out. So I don't know if there's a good solution there, Alex, but it's something, right?
Yep, sounds better than nothing.
That is. One of the charts that was released today was billion-dollar clubs, so billion-dollar valuations via Sportico around the world of football. And so we can go into all of these wonderful teams that everybody has heard of, including Real Madrid, who's valued at $6.5 billion. You have Manchester United, $6.1 billion. Barcelona, 5.7. Liverpool, 5.6. Yada, yada, yada. Chelsea at 3.6 is the 10th most highest valued club in the sport of football. The interesting theory here is that you go Atletico at 11, Dortmund at 12, Juventus at 13, AC Milan at 14, Inter at 15. So the top 15, no North American clubs in there. And then the next 5, that is LAFC, Inter Miami, LA Galaxy, Atlanta United, and New York City FC, all valued at over $1 billion. It's not teams anywhere else, not Mexican side teams. It's not, teams in the I'm trying to think. Like Dortmund is, you have Dortmund as sort of one of the Dortmund and Bayern as the Bundesliga teams, but for the most part, the Bundesliga teams are in there. You have the top Italy teams, and that's about it with AC Milan and Inter Milan and Juventus, Atletico. So it's sort of, a little bit on, but it feels like all of a sudden there's a lot of world football that gets skipped over to get to MLS, and it is MLS. 16, 17, 18, and 19. The Galaxy valued at $1.1 billion via Sportico in that top 20. Is any of that surprising to you, Alex?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, given the markets of LA and Miami, not surprised there's high valuations there. But like you mentioned, Josh, right? You have 5 teams right there from MLS. You have 1 team from France, right? And then you have like 3 teams from Germany, right? So it's interesting to see that these MLS clubs are being able to kind of hold their weight against some of those major names when it comes to both the sport and the marketing aspect of it.
Right.
Obviously, Inter Miami right now has all the marketing momentum when it comes to the Messi jerseys and, all the big names they have. And, LA Galaxy obviously for years have kind of become that established name here in North America and across the world. So I'm not surprised to see them there as well. So, I mean, I think the most interesting thing to me is seeing, New York City and Atlanta out there, considering these are teams that haven't been very successful as of late, but nonetheless, the market that they're in is what's kind of giving them that value. So it shows that, if soccer really wants to, here in America, really wants to grow, just, let the reins off, just let teams spend. And I'm sure they'll be able to attract as many big name players as some of the biggest clubs in the world, but they're not given that opportunity to do so.
Inter Miami at $1.2 billion, the second most valuable MLS team per Sportico here. It's interesting because as of right now, they sort of have that temporary stadium that would be listed under their assets, and whenever they finish that permanent stadium, I would expect that Inter Miami probably jumps well above LAFC, possibly into some of the other ones, just with where they're at with Lionel Messi there. Whenever he leaves and how that happened, that's another question to see how that value sort of stays and how their valuation stays. But wait till they get a stadium. Same with New York City, by the way. That is another club. Watch that jump whenever they get their stadium. Atlanta United is like co-owners with their stadium there. So with the Atlanta Hawks, they're able to sort of, the Falcons. I got my sports confused. It's okay. But whenever you have like the football stadium, it's sort of split between both Atlanta United and like the football team, and so you can sort of go between those two. The LA Galaxy, interesting for LA Galaxy and LAFC in terms of like their land deals, where they both own the stadiums, but they don't necessarily own the land, right? Because the stadium is at Cal State Dominguez Hills. It's I believe it's a land use agreement that they have. They own the stadium on top of it, but they don't necessarily own the land underneath it. So that also sort of hits valuations and does some interesting things there whenever it comes to it. But yeah, I was sort of shocked to see that as much, and this is probably a poor way, Alex, to sort of say that MLS is a World Football League. It's more of a World Football League than people want to really say. If they're getting these valuations, then there's something behind this. And somebody was saying it was also probably wise that, whenever you buy into the club or buy into the league, you have to spend a certain amount of money. And so that valuation on that probably also helps these $1 billion. If you're paying $500 million or $650 million to join the league now, that basically goes in to establish the worth of the club as well.
Yep, and the relegation as well. So it's always an appreciating asset no matter what. I mean, these club values have gone up every year. If you compare it for the past 5-10 years, and, not having relegation plays a big part in that, because you're just able to grow the brand, you're able to grow the team and not worry about taking that financial hit from playing in the second division or losing players because of that. So, I mean, that's another big help for MLS when it comes to these evaluations.
Yeah, it's not wrong. Patrick, by the way, was saying MLS needs to do what USL is doing and develop that sort of closed system pro-rel, right? Which is like, hey, we're going to create 2 leagues in MLS, so you'd have 2 divisions, like Division 1, Division 2 of MLS. And so if you lose, you'd have let's see, right now it'd be 15 teams probably in each division, that type of thing. And then if you get relegated, the bottom 3 get relegated, the top 3 from Division 2 get up, and that way it's sort of still a closed system relegation in things. So you're not going to completely disappear and go away. It's at least the only version of relegation I ever think could be possible in Major League Soccer, which is basically, we're going to knock you down to Division 2 instead of Division 1. But I imagine that still has significant repercussions for teams, and I doubt that they would ever sign on to that.
Yeah, I mean, the owners, I doubt, are going to want to agree with that. I mean,
right.
if you tell them, hey, this is going to be an appreciating asset, and then oops, all of a sudden, you can lose value. They're not going to agree to that. So MLS is kind of has their hands tied when it comes to wanting to do stuff like that. That's why that very topic of relegation in this country, especially with MLS, is a very hard thing to discuss logistically.
Yeah, it certainly is. One of the other charts that came out today was that MLS released all the roster profiles updated as of May 1st for all of the teams. And so we got our look at the LA Galaxy's roster profile here. Alex, I think you and I were talking before we started. There's not a bunch of surprises on this. I think it's everything that you sort of already knew. You had Joseph Paintsel, Gabriel Peck, Ricky Puig all listed as designated players. They have current status on it, and they list Ricky Puig as unavailable. If you go to the international slots, they call the LA Galaxy having 11, and one of the reasons is that Ricky Puig is out, so that international slot is actually unused for him. And then Gino Vivi's out on loan, and his international slot there is also not being used as we speak on that. So that's one of the things that's sort of listed there. They had Julian Aude and Nascimento and Sanabria in there as U22 initiatives, which is, again, we all knew that. You can sort of look at the loan player and how that sort of plays out. They have option years, by the way, for Nascimento as 2028 and 2029, which means a purchase in there would be basically get you to 2028, I believe, if they were to purchase Nascimento, which as of right now, I don't know that they would. But this is one of those try before you buy sort of deals. And the LA Galaxy are still sort of rolling him out. I just think that he's a development project, much like Dejan Joveljic was whenever he joined. You're seeing those guys. The TAM players, Diego Fagundes, Amiro Garces, Marco Royce, and Miki Amane. Those are your TAM players. The big deal is the rest of the guys who are under no other designation in terms of, not designated player, not U22, not JAM. Two of those guys, I can't wait to see salary information on. One is Maya Yoshida, which we had anticipated, Alex, him not being part of the TAM side of things with the pay cut that we were pretty sure he took, and we kind of figured that he would come down underneath the salary cap. So that was one. But the other one is that Zonka is also not in that TAM area at all. So we know, under about that $650,000 range in terms of salary. We just don't know how much of that salary is going to be taken up there. Was there anything surprising for you?
Just the things you mentioned with Yoshida and Zonka, obviously those two veterans. Yoshida, obviously we know he's, had to take a pay cut to come back. Zonka was playing in Europe prior to arriving at the LA Galaxy. So for me, I was interested in his salary. Coming into this year. But yeah, aside from that, no real surprises. It's just interesting to think about just the roster build and all the salary cap constraints the Galaxy had for this year. Obviously, we know Gabriel Peck was no longer going to be listed as a young designated player, so you have a bigger cap hit there. You'll have Amiro Garces, who last year was technically on loan, right?
Right.
And now he had a to buy clause in there, and the Galaxy exercised that. So now he potentially has a bigger cap hit than he did last year. Aside from that, nothing too shocking. But like you said, Josh, very much more interested of salary numbers to see kind of who's getting paid what, who's against the Galaxy's books. Like, let's not forget, like Sean Davis was on this team, and then he got cut before the season started, so we have no idea what his salary with the LA Galaxy would have been. There's a lot of numbers there that's missing, but still interesting look to see kind of the designations across the team. And whenever we get the salary numbers, we'll be able to break it down a little bit better as well.
Yeah, it certainly looks like that. The LA Galaxy's general allocation money available still at zero. Not a surprise, I think. There were actually three teams that were at zero. Toronto, Charlotte, and the LA Galaxy. Not alone in terms of what everybody's trying to do and understanding that at zero does not mean death. It just means that you're going to have to be a little more creative if you wanted to do anything. So max salary budget charge in 2025 is $743,750. So anybody who you see here in white, Miguel Berry, Edwin Cerrillo, Zonka, JT Marcinkowski, John McCarthy, John Nelson, Christian Ramirez, Elijah Wynder, and Maya Yoshida are likely their salaries are all under that $745,000. Well, some of those would be significantly under those particular numbers there. But seeing where they're at and seeing what Maya Yoshida is going to be at, because certainly there was preseason angst there about the salary cut that he had to take. This chart now means something, right? So now we have to watch it a little bit closer and sort of see what the salaries are and where it is. It's our favorite game. When the salaries come out, it'll be who's overpaid, who's underpaid, who's paid just right, and we'll get to basically figure out all of those things in terms of what players are worth and what they're costing against the cap and some of those other things. With the LA Galaxy at zero general allocation money, all the money is basically being used to buy players down from the cap. That's what general allocation money is used for, to basically take numbers that could be over the max salary budget, or to take numbers that are well under, but you can still pay down a certain amount in order to make sure that you fit under the just shy of $6 million team salary budget for 2025. And I would imagine that the LA Galaxy are right up against that. I mean, their team salary budget is probably $5,949 instead of $5,950,000, right? So it's right there. It's one of those things. It shows, I think, the LA Galaxy not having a ton of flexibility, Alex, but I also think that with Wilkins in there, and quite honestly with Greg Vanney in there, there's still options to be made. The Galaxy still have 4 goalkeepers, and I'm still waiting for that to play. I mean, eventually somebody's going to go, right? You can't have 4 goalkeepers on a roster. That seems excessive, right?
I mean, definitely, given the fact that, most times you just need 2, maybe 3, right? And we know Brady Scott's out there getting minutes with Ventura County. We know Novak Mitrovic has, previously kind of talked about his discontent about, not being a starter and, try to get his way out of Los Angeles. So we don't know where that situation's at as well. But I mean, John McCarthy, I think, has already established himself as the number 1 for the rest of the year. I don't see Novak Mitrovic getting any minutes aside from, League's Cup or any other tournament play that the Galaxy are in, right? So you have JT Martinkowski, who's an MLS veteran who, at this point, going through a serious injury and, rehabbing here. Like, I think he's more than content to be a backup and, be able to kind of play that role for now. So, yeah, I mean, one of these goalkeepers, I think, by the time the summer transfer window ends, will not be here. I mean, this is a great way to make some extra general allocation money, free up some salary cap space. And we know the Galaxy are trying to position themselves to, have some flexibility to, if there's a move to make, they can be able to do it. And I think if they're going to pull a trigger on a player or a trade, it's going to involve one of these goalkeepers. And
looking at that roster, it's also fairly clear that this isn't the strong. If you look at it compared to last year's roster, that it isn't the strongest, right? Without Mark Delgado, without Gaston Brugman, even Jalen Neal moving off, or any of the other things. Ricky Puig not. I mean, Ricky Puig automatically, if he comes back and you have the 2 other designated players with Joseph Paintsel and Gabriel Peck, all of a sudden this roster starts looking good again. But I'll tell you right now, it feels thin, and I think the LA Galaxy feel like it's thin, certainly in different parts. But that was one of the interesting things. Greg Vanney did his Wednesday press conference because they were traveling on Thursday today for the LA Galaxy to get to New York. They'll train on Friday and then ready for that game on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Our time, 7:30 p.m. over on the East Coast. So as they prep for that, but it was a Wednesday press conference. I did not get to go. I did not get to call in for it, unfortunately. But good news is Alex was, and so we are in a position now to sort of hear from Greg. And this is Greg Vanney, who is now firmly on the hot seat, right? This is Greg Vanney, who is under some pressure. Certainly after Monday night's show and the reporting, I think that the Panda did, Alex, I think we got a little more insight into everything that's going on. And I am under no belief right now that, negotiations between the LA Galaxy and Greg Vanney are going great. But I don't know whatever. I also really feel for Greg Vanney on the side of that, which is, hey, I just won an MLS Cup. How did I not get a contract extension? Like, how's that not already done, right, Alex? Like, it should have been, even if he's 500 at this point right now, he's getting, a 2-year contract extension, at least possibly 3 years. The fact that there's so much pressure on him and the club right now is crazy talk, because after you win an MLS Cup championship, you should be set for a little while. And I think that's why Greg keeps pointing to the MLS Cup. Now, and he's not physically, his agent is doing it, right? And his agent is Ron Waxman. And Ron's probably pointing to the MLS Cup and the trophy cabinet, because that's the coach that you want, the one that you won that. Do you remember that? And that means you're going to have to pay up. It's going to be 2 to 3 years on the extension and everything else. And I think the LA Galaxy right now are like, I can't even give you a year because I may have to end up firing you in the next 3 or 4 games. So it's a rock and a hard place. It is not fun. But Greg Vanney was a little spicy on the Wednesday midweek press conference, Alex. Is spicy the correct term for it?
Yeah, I'd say so. And look, if I was Greg Vanney, I'd feel the same way. If we're talking about this contract situation, given that he and his people just weren't able to capitalize on getting an extension in the offseason. I mean, come on, you had all the leverage winning MLS Cup. You kind of had this honeymoon period. You can point to Greg, being the coach that revived the LA Galaxy. You had all these good stories, all this good work of, Greg kind of being able to develop players like Serio, like Peck, and other players as well during his time with the LA Galaxy, and still no deal, no future. I just don't understand how this wasn't something that got done during this winter. We already had questions going back to this offseason about the futures of Peck. Is the team from Europe going to get him? Is Yoshida going to be back, right? Puig, is he going to be the same player? One of those questions too is Greg going to still be that guy leading this club for the next 3-4 years? And you could have answered that question immediately in the offseason, so that way if you were in the worst case scenario, which you are right now,
right,
you would not have that lingering over the coach's head as he's trying to solve this issue, and he's having to deal with a lot of roster turnover and injuries that are not his fault. So it feels like this played out in the worst possible way for both the Galaxy and Greg Vanney. And yeah, I think during Wednesday's media availability, he did feel a little bit spicy. I mean, he had to talk about what was wrong with his team. He had to talk about, what are you going to do to fix it? He had to talk about his future and all those things for one man who, for a year dealt with the boycott, dealt with,
right,
similar situations in 2023.
Right.
Now he's got to deal with that all over again.
Flashbacks.
So if I was him, I would get PTSD from that year and, I guess how traumatic it was having to deal with that. And if you watch the Onside documentary, when Greg Vanney kind of talks about that towards the last episode, you could tell he gets emotional going back, thinking about it. So it's not a fun memory for him. And I know for sure it's probably something that he doesn't want to reminisce about, but unfortunately he's getting flashbacks to that this year.
Yeah, and everybody's in this position now. I always have two sort of things. And by the way, $2 super chat from Adam, who says, "Props to Alex for asking the tough questions." We'll get to that here in a second. But I go with two minds of this, and it was funny. I was talking to another reporter today, and we were sort of going back and forth on some of the stuff with Greg and just the press conference and everything that was sort of going on. And I was like, he's spicy. You always know he's starting to get a little angry whenever he starts swearing. And I think Greg swears all the time. We just don't get to hear it. It's like me. Yeah. I swear all the time. People have no idea. I swear constantly. If you are at work with me, you would think, how is it possible this man has a podcast in which he has, I think maybe only once in 17 years ever sworn on this show. And I did it on purpose for effect. So it wasn't like I slipped or anything like that. So I don't swear on this show, but I swear in my real life. Greg Vanney's the same with us. Whenever he talks to us, 90% of the time he doesn't swear. Whenever he starts getting angry, even, and defensive, and I understand why. Again, this is not a criticism of Greg Vanney. I would expect that he's feeling the pressure. I would expect that he's going to get spicy with this. And, I think Greg also should know and should understand that he's going to get questions like this, especially whenever the team is winless in 11, looking like it's going to be winless in 12, 13, or 14. So he's got to expect that as well. So looking at what he did and what it is, I keep sitting there. He went on Wednesday, Alex, and he was talking and answering questions about, sort of what was wrong with the team, as you pointed out. But he went in to say, he goes, when you lose like a Gaston Bergman, when you lose a Mark Delgado, you're losing like pieces, like significant knowledge of the system and pieces of the team that worked really well. And now those are gone, and we brought in younger pieces that don't fit as well yet, and that they need to be developed. So just like stopping, because he's talked about sort of the cascade of mistakes that happen that have led to goals, and how, it's really, you can stop those mistakes at any time, right? It doesn't have to be mistake after mistake after mistake. You can make one mistake, and if somebody steps into the proper position, you can end that string of mistakes. That being said, he was pretty pointed, and I think the most pointed he's been that, losing Delgado, losing Brugman, you losing guys like Dejan Joveljic, screwed him. And he's right. They did. The only side sort of caveat that I have with that, Alex, is that as president and GM that he was acting as in 2022 and parts, I think, even of 2023, right? He's sort of responsible for the salary cap issues that has sort of hit him in 2024 at the end of the season. and now, you had to make decisions, and those are decisions that you have to be made. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Patrick in the chat room, but he said, either this year is an indictment of the LA Galaxy or an indictment of Major League Soccer, and perhaps it's both, right? Just in terms of bad cap management, and then the sacrifices that you had to pay to the championship gods in order to have the salary cap remain the way it was, with all the guys now wanting max money and max everything, right? Is there something? I feel like he's been backed into a little bit of a corner this year, but at the same time, maybe he had some responsibility to put himself in the corner there.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Josh, him kind of being that sporting director, taking that hat of managing everything at once during 2022 and in 2023 a bit. We really kind of are starting to see a little bit of effects of that. Obviously, with the cap and all the situations with some players who, are no longer on this team, but still on the books for this club, right? So, I mean, it's interesting to kind of see that all play out. But, Greg's human, and I think any person who's in the scenario that he's in would have gotten defensive in a way. And like you said, when he gets spicy, or a little bit heated, he's just being real. He's showing his raw emotions. A lot of times it's very cool, calm, collected, very structured, and a lot that he talks about. But when he gets real, you can kind of tell. I don't know if it's frustration. Yeah, I would say probably a frustration, an anger, kind of just I'm doing my best, but it's still not working kind of situation. And if you've ever kind of felt that way, you blame yourself, you blame the world, you kind of are all over the place. And I wouldn't say Greg is, in a bad headspace right now, but there's just so much on his plate now that he has to think about when it comes to the team and when it comes to his personal future, that I think for any person, it would definitely be affecting them a lot more than he's showing right now.
You look at the LA Galaxy, and just in terms of, you could sort of go to the two starters that they lost with Delgado and Joveljic. You could certainly put Brugman, who only had 1,200 minutes last year, as one of those sort of outlier guys off the bench that made the LA Galaxy really good. That was something. You pull Ricky Puig off of the team, so you can start going into this and you pull Ricky Puig off the team. That really helps. He's the engine that was keeping everything sort of running. Now you've had significant injuries to Joseph Paintsil to start this year, and now as of right now, Gabriel Peck is going to be missing again. You've had Sanabria, who broke a collarbone. You've had Cuevas, who spent time out. I mean, I know people, and we're now at the portion of the fire Greg side of things, Alex, where people just want to do something because they want to be made, they want to feel better, like there's going to be a change, like there's going to be improvement, like things are going to get better. So that's sort of the area that you're at, that I think a lot of people are at with Greg Vanney, and I see it in the chat rooms and everything like that. I'll say those are pretty short-sighted concerns whenever you're looking at the overall, what you're trying to do with the team, what systems you're running, what you're doing in the academy all the way up through the very top. I mean, Greg Vanney has restructured everything in that front office after what was I would say a pretty dismal effect over the really sad years that have happened. That Greg Vanney deserves a ton of credit for coming in here, and if you watch any of the academy teams, if you the MLS Next Pro teams, like any of that, Alex, they all play the same way, right? They all play this build-up, progressive possession game. And, if you continue that and you have that sort of singular focus throughout everything, you will develop players who can come and play. I mean, Isaiah Parente is sort of one of those guys who has sort of been in the system for a little bit, that now you're sort of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Ruben Ramos Jr. is possibly one of those guys. Harbor Miller is one of those guys. These are system guys, and they know the system already. So you have to decide now, and I think the contract issue is really sort of the turning point, at least for me, Alex, is the Galaxy have to decide whether Greg Vanney is the leader for the long term here, regardless of sort of what's happening right now, and you sort of have to close your eyes to it. Is Greg Vanney the guy who should be staying here longer term? And for me, seeing what he's been able to do, you have to be real careful before you decide that you're going to move on from Greg Vanney. I don't know. You're going to have a really good answer that can come in and, again, sort of affect everything the LA Galaxy are doing from top to bottom if you decide that it's time for him to go. And in the current light, in the current situation, sometimes that means you close your eyes. And I said it, I think I said it on Monday's show. I'll say it again, Alex. Will Kuntz is going to have some grande huevos, because I believe that the long-term health of the LA Galaxy is something that is not just flippant on, a 12-game, 13-game winless streak, especially whenever you can put in the mitigating factors that have been in there. So that's my take. But I also understand that, after a certain point that something's going to have to happen regardless, because somebody wants blood, Alex. Somebody wants blood, and they're going to get it some way or the other, and you can't get rid of all the players. And so coaches are hired to be fired, as that's been said before.
Yep, exactly. I mean, the one thing we did know is Greg Vanney eventually will no longer be with the LA Galaxy, right? That's the one thing we do know. But yeah, it's such an interesting situation given that the star player is out. And Ricky, he's a very vocal person. I'm sure when some moves went down in the offseason, I'm sure, he made his voice very clear of how he felt about it. So yeah, we know Ricky's a Greg guy. He's backed him on social media. I think he posted once saying whenever someone tweeted out, "It's time for Vanney out," he tweeted no, and that kind of shows like, hey, Puig has bought into Vanney's philosophy. He's bought into it. But obviously, if you're Ricky Puig, you kind of would be if he lets you kind of get 70 touches like a half.
Yeah.
Like I would be bought in if the coach allows me to touch the ball that many times.
Right.
But yeah, Will Kuntz and the front office, Mikkel Denscher, technical director, those guys are gonna have to make a real judgment call. How much weight do you put on this season? I mean, obviously we know that the situation is not fair for Greg and it's not his fault. But at the same time, is this still going to be the guy you want leading the club for the next 5 years? Because we now have this next generation, next iteration of a Greg Vanney Galaxy team with players like Sanabria, who signed on a 5-year deal. Garces, right, on a 5-year deal as well. Aude is still a very young player in the U22. Nascimento, obviously, they're going to have to make a call on him eventually. But yeah, I mean, they have to make that decision. Is he still going to be the guy? Does Greg still want to be here too? Like, we got to ask that as well. Is he, not happy with how the situation is being handled? And is it maybe going to lead him to look for another situation, another team he can turn around? Because Greg Vanney is going to have a lot of suitors if he's on the market.
100%.
He's a coach who's made Toronto relevant when they weren't for a lot of their history.
Right.
And he's the man who turned the LA Galaxy around back to contenders after a decade of mediocrity. Any team in MLS is going to want him. So if he wants to test out the market, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of suitors for him. So the Galaxy kind of just have to get the situation under wraps sooner rather than later before it spirals out into Greg maybe considering, I don't want to be here anymore. Let me go somewhere else. Let me be able to, create a legacy at another club, because teams will be willing to pay Greg, will be willing to want him to bring him into the club because he's a very well-respected coach across the league.
Yeah, Crazy Brain $5 super chat says, explain it to me like I'm 5. When can we trade players, and are they legit doing it, or are we keeping or stuck with what we have and hoping Ricky helps us improve? First of all, I don't think Alex, I don't think anybody's expecting Ricky Puig to come in and save this team. That's going to be if they continue down the spiral path they're on right now, then it is. It would be difficult for them to have Ricky do anything. Now, that being said, and I can't believe I have to beat my head against the wall. There's still people who believe that Ricky Puig is should be shut down for the rest of the year. You can't. All right, and I'm going to explain it one more time and listen very, very carefully. There is so much rehab that has to be done inside of games. There is so much trust that Ricky Puig has to gain back in his ability to move laterally, to be able to make passes the way that he did, to be able to think as fast as he did whenever he's been out for this period of time. This guy, Alex, because he hasn't had any major injuries before, this is the longest he's ever not been playing soccer and playing a game in his entire life. Right? You have mental issues, and this isn't like, oh, Ricky's soft mentally. No, the mental side of just being able to trust yourself. So when Ricky is medically cleared, as in they're not concerned, they're not rushing, there's no rushing, and they're not going to rush Ricky Puig back anyway. But when he's medically cleared, you get him back out on the field and you let him play. And this isn't up for discussion. This isn't the LA Galaxy. And by the way, you can be careful with his minutes whenever he comes back and plays, and you can be careful in the situations that you put him in. You can do that. But he comes back and he plays, and you need him to play 100%. That's my main take on Ricky Puig and everything that is coming in. That being said, as transfer windows close now, trades I believe can still happen internally only because the certificates, the ITC certificates, are technically owned by Major League Soccer. And so I believe you can still do that. We've seen a couple additions and a couple little things that have sort of come through recently. So it still seems like that's a possibility. The Galaxy have said that and we've had Will Kuntz on, I believe that he says there's flexibility in what they're trying to do to be able to do something this summer. And I think, Alex, you hinted on it, certainly moving a goalkeeper or opening up space that way could certainly be something. I don't think it's going to be anything major or massive. And I'm really interested to see what Marco Reus's situation is by the time you get to summer, because I've been sort of, if he gets injured again, I've been sort of convinced that may be it, right? It may be time for him to hang out. What are your thoughts on the flexibility they have or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, the Galaxy just kind of have to keep the door open for any opportunities. I mean, maybe a fifth goalkeeper. Maybe that's what breaks his curse. You never know. But I mean, can he play striker? Because they kind of do need some extra bodies up there. But yeah, I do think the Galaxy right now just need to, see what's available. We know markets change. We know within the league you can find some value. I mean, let's go back a couple of years ago when, Will Kuntz orchestrated the trades of Diego Fagundes, of Edwin Surreal, right? Of Michael Barrios, right? Those,
Yep.
Those weren't guys who were big names, but they helped give that extra spark and extra boost to the Galaxy. And I think, Will's a smart GM. He knows how to navigate these trades within MLS. And I think if there's an opportunity to get a player that they believe can improve the team in the long term, I think they will make that move happen. We know their salary cap constraints are, going to make it difficult for them to kind of, have a lot of flexibility in how much salary they can bring into the team. But I mean, you have to take that risk if there is that opportunity there. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussions and a lot of intra-league kind of discussions among the LA Galaxy higher ups of who can we get. Because, given the fact that all three DP slots are full,
right,
all U22 slots are full, it feels like within the league is the only realistic possibility we can see when it comes to how the Galaxy acquire players.
I will say this, the other point that I will sort of add to all the discussion about Greg Vanney leaving or anything else is that the players are 100% still bought into Greg Vanney.
Oh, yes.
See, that's the funny thing.
He hasn't lost the locker room. He hasn't lost the locker room.
Not
at all.
Not even for a second, right? Then that's, if you talk to any reporter, and I was talking to a couple today outside of you, Alex, we were having some conversations today too, but you ask everybody, and I always like to ask, I go, but he's still got, I mean, there's not a player in there who wouldn't just like go run through a brick wall for him, right? Somebody brought up the fact that Vancouver was pretty good with Vanni Sartini, right, there last year, and then they switched coaches and, they got better. They also had a mostly returning club. And nobody picked them to be as good as they are this year. It's really sort of a good machination of, a change in coaching, certainly, but that all those players developing. I mean, Sebastian Berhalter, nobody was like, oh, Sebastian Berhalter's going to be a breakout player in Major League Soccer this year. Everybody knew that Brian White was really good, Alex, but I don't think anybody thought Brian White would be this good. It's just a matter of a team peaking at the right time. And for Sartini, it's unfortunate probably, because I would imagine that they would probably be pretty similar to how they played this year, even without him. That's sort of the whole thing too. Catching teams at the right time, catching the peaks and the valleys. We've talked about it, but 2023 should have been a good year for the LA Galaxy with the players they had and things that they sort of had going for reasons that we've been over a million times. It wasn't, right? And so to me, that was one of those upward peak years that the Galaxy sort of missed. So then they did all their growing in 2024, and they had all their success in 2024. But when you look at what the salary cap was, that was sort of the end of that group, not the beginning of the group. And it's better whenever you have success sort of at the beginning of the group. And we've certainly seen that through the years with the LA Galaxy. If you watched, in 2009 and 2010, and sort of how those teams built to championships in 11 and 12, and then, a break in 13, but still a pretty good team, and then another rise in 14, and then that was it. 14 after that, 14, the groups had sort of, expired themselves. And Bruce Arena always did a great job of reloading, Alex. He's one of the best at doing it. But you can still sort of see the waves and the success that it comes. And the last time, a team won back-to-back MLS Cups was under Bruce Arena. So, you can sort of see you see some of those things. By the way, executive producer Herb says $4. Any updates on a potential live show? Working on it. I will have something for you. I'm trying to get something done in May. All right, so let's see if we can make that happen. I was supposed to go out of town, and now I haven't gone out of town, so I'm waiting if that's going to end up happening. Javier, by the way, $5 super chat to Alex. He goes, "You guys wake up as Greg Vanney. What will be your lineup and formation for the next game?" Alex, take it away as we transition to this New York game.
Yeah. I think Greg's going to have a lot of choices to make. Like I mentioned earlier, you kind of have to put some faith in a lot of players who don't have a lot of responsibility on the team when everyone's healthy. Actually, I kind of have a lineup graphic that I was going to plan to post tomorrow. So if you kind of want to see that, I'll post it tomorrow on X. But I would go with the back five or back three, right? I think my center backs, obviously McCarthy in goal, would be Yoshida and Garces, and I'd play Mickey Amane kind of as a right-sided center back. More because I'm playing Cuevas as a right wing back, so he can get higher up the field, right? Have that freedom to stretch the field. You can have Mickey who can, cover that space at the right back position when Cuevas goes forward, and he can also play inside. Because I'll be playing with 2 6s with Cerrillo and Sanabria. That way you kind of have that stability there. You'll have Julian Alde on the left as the left wing back to, add that extra verticality and that one-on-one ability that he's very good at when it comes to dribbling with other defenders. And then I'd play with the front two. I'd have Marco Reus starting as the 10, and then I'd put Christian Ramirez and Miguel Berry as the starting strikers up front. I think Berry's a really good guy to cause chaos among center backs, a bigger physical body, right? And I think Ramirez is at his best when he kind of also be like a playmaker, drop back a little bit and connect with other players. And I think if you have Barry making those darting runs, I think Ramirez is going to find Barry at least once, and there'll be a good chance there. That's what I would do, given, Pack and Paintsill not being out there. Like I said, tomorrow I'll post that formation because I've kind of been thinking about it. I've been a very big advocate of a back three, of a back five. So
Right.
That's what I would do. So that's my big brain idea. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Josh.
No, I always say that no matter who the coach is, that you always were trying to, usually you're trying to change as little as possible from what you thought was quote unquote working. I don't know what that means this year, right? Certainly I can tell you that, looking at the success the Galaxy had in the last 2 games, and they were, I'm not saying they won the games, but the success when they were in the proper formations is having Marco Reus in the center and having support, it looks like, from Diego Fagundes in that center was good for them. So I'm tempted to make sure that I plan everything around that, and then I put Cerrillo in as my 6 that sort of backs in behind there. I think I'd still stay with a back 4, but I move Julian Aude on the left-hand side. I would put, Miki Yamane on the right-hand side. I would ask Yamane to tuck in a little bit to help Cerrillo. We've seen him invert into the middle of the pitch a whole bunch. I think he does that less now because there's not a Mark Delgado who's going out there and sort of flying out to the wing to cover the wing side whenever you need to. But the Galaxy, I think, need a little more help in the center in transitions at the moment. I'm not saying you can't get him forward, but he's going to get forward with Mauricio Cuevas on that right-hand side. I think I'm with you on that, right? I don't know what to do with the left-hand side. I'm actually thinking about putting somebody like Elijah Wynder out there, or maybe a Tucker Leply. Leply might be a more interesting take. I want Diego Fagundes to shade to that side, just because I think that if you put him and Leply, and then on that left-hand side, I feel like there's good chemistry there, and so maybe some good passing in sort of the middle. I keep Christian Ramirez up top, in there. So I mean, I try not to change things whenever I have big problems. The only thing is that I usually try to go to stuff that works. And I'm not sure that we've cracked that code. So, Alex, I'm not in disagreement with you all. If you wanted to change things, you really wanted to. And listen, the pressure is going to be on Greg for this, right? We know, and by the way, the most pressure, and in probably one of the most unfair situations he had all season, where he's expecting to be missing both Joseph Paintsill and Gabriel Peck. That hasn't happened yet this year. So this is the thing. It does sort of harken back, and let's get you ready for this game as we sort of talk about it. But again, the LA Galaxy traveling 2,450 miles, about 5 hours and 15 minutes. God forbid they had to fly into Newark. And that has been an air traffic control nightmare as of late. But I imagine they all made it and everything's good. But they were traveling there, so it can be up to like 5 hours and 45 minutes, depending on weather and everything else. It'll be over 6 hours on the way back home. But 2,450 miles to head to Sports Illustrated Stadium. That's right. If you didn't know, Red Bull Arena, now named Sports Illustrated Stadium, and has been in there. And it's still a stadium out on the docks in New Jersey. And now it looks like they have condos next to it. So that's sort of what it is. I still always have loved this stadium, just in terms of the design. It's very European, and I think it's a really cool place to sort of watch there. But this is sort of the choice. The really interesting thing that I think I saw in all of this is looking at New York and looking at the LA Galaxy is that possession has been fairly similar between the two, whenever you take everything into account, and that is not the same New York Red Bulls that were playing at the end of last season, where they didn't want the ball and please don't give me the ball. Please don't make me take it and carry it. This year, they seem to be a little more comfortable in possession, but I still think you're going going to look for those high pressing moments and all the things that you've become accustomed to seeing the Red Bulls. And the fact that it is an MLS Cup rematch, I mean, listen, all the momentum is certainly in the Red Bulls' court on this. I can't imagine that the LA Galaxy are going to go in here and really cause any major problems. I know that's sad to sort of say, but the only hope I think I would sort of rely on here, Alex, whenever we look at this, is that there were times in the past when, certainly back in the Bruce Arena days, where you'd throw in the kids and you'd let the kids go out there and just run people to death, right? The energy would be super high. You were going to just let them run and be confusing and not like necessarily play to a set plan and not be predictable. And I think that there's going to be enough young talent on the field. Maybe you look at like Tucker Leply, or you're going to look at Mauricio Cuevas. You're going to look at guys like that there could be an unpredictability about the LA Galaxy's sort of younger formation. That's my thought on at least the initial thought on the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to want to match up with the Red Bulls kind of intensity and that press that they tend to play with, putting out a younger team with fresher legs that are able to run a bit longer, that's the way to go for sure. But I've just, it just sucks to be in Greg's situation right now, because no matter what you put out, it's not your best. And I think everybody on the team is going to know it's not your best.
Right.
And the Red Bulls are going to know it's not your best. I mean, the Red Bulls right here have all the leverage in this game. They're at home. They have that revenge factor on their side, while they, try to go and take out a Galaxy side that is just searching for anything at this point. I mean, look, like we talked about it at the start of the show. I mean, you lost the game and you didn't even allow the opponent to shoot. I mean, that has to be such a demoralizing way to just lose the game, and now you have to head out to the other side of the country on a road trip to face New York. I think the Red Bulls are going to be smelling the blood in the water, and I think that, they're going to be aggressive in this game, and I think it's going to be up to the Galaxy to be able to match that intensity come Saturday.
Yeah, and there's, I'm not saying you don't just like catch them, right? Like you could just catch New York. I think the chat room said one of these teams is going to underestimate the LA Galaxy because they're so bad. Like they've been so bad, but they haven't been. I mean, that was one of the things that Greg Vanney was talking about today again. Was sort of the ability to be in all these games. They've been in every single game they've really played, and so it's difficult to sort of match what the results were with what we've seen, right? That's sort of been the big deal there, but I don't. One is you don't bet on the LA Galaxy right now. You can't, because they haven't proven that they can win. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a value for you there if you're actually trying to put bets down and do that stuff. There could be, enough where you don't care if you lose money and the upside is good enough that it would be a nice hit.
I mean, you're just going to bet the unders for the attackers. That's all you would do if you want to get money out of this LA Galaxy team.
Very, very well should, right? Just haven't scored a ton of goals, haven't done that. There can be the element of surprise in this, but you can't tell me that whenever you travel. First of all, we know how difficult it is to win on the road in Major League Soccer. It's difficult. People don't like to hear that because they like to compare it to Europe, where again, I was talking to the journalist from Denmark, and he was like, the longest place you ever travel in Denmark is like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour bus ride. That's not the same as traveling 5 to 6 hours across the country by plane, across 3 time zones, right, and everything that's going on there. The body clock actually probably works for the LA Galaxy in this moment. 4:30 p.m. is not a horrible time to play a game, and that should be a pretty good time on a Saturday night on the East Coast. So you expect good things from that. But the Galaxy are shorthanded. I don't know what the bench is going to look like. Again, all hands on deck. Harbor Miller, Ruben Ramos Jr., Isaiah Parente, Elijah Wynder, Tucker Leply. They're all going to be dressed and ready for this game. And it feels like they're going to be adding 7 players to the roster when they really have only lost 2 with what they're doing. But it's going to be a scramble, and the Galaxy have to figure out a way. It's the byproduct, Alex, for me, of not getting a win before this. Is that there's relatively little room for error for you. If we're playing the guessing game, I say the LA Galaxy lose the next 2 games, and I can say that with totally understanding everything everybody's going through. What happens whenever Paintsel comes back? What happens whenever Pet comes back? And they sort of quote unquote get healthy again? I don't know. I'll go back to one of my favorite rules, Alex. There is no rule that guarantees a team will eventually be healthy during a year. We saw it in 2023, and right now we're seeing it in 2025.
Yep, we saw that Sunday night.
Yeah. For 75 minutes, the LA Galaxy were healthy, and then they weren't anymore, right? See, Alex, that's the thing. And again, I was talking to another reporter today, and we were talking, and we were saying, if you haven't watched these games and you've just been watching the results, and if you get overly emotional about the results, you could be in a really bad place right now. And I think that there are people who are in a bad place with the LA Galaxy. Get rid of everybody, fire people. I want blood. Do something. But if you've watched the games, if you know the injuries and you've seen the things that have gone through, I'm sort of like, I kind of understand it, right? And Patrick, I think in the chat room said something of, it was a choice to lose those players. It wasn't a choice. You had to lose somebody. You were going to lose players, all right? So there was a matter of what assets you had that you were able to get value for and what you aren't. Yeah, there's not. Everybody goes back to Mark Delgado and Diego Fagundes, and yes, there's I think Kevin did a pretty nice job on Monday night of trying to like juxtapose those two and how you can make those moves and the whole deal. I know how they picked Diego Fagundes, and I also know that the long-term stature of Mark Delgado and his contract probably also played a pretty big role in what they were trying to do, at what age and where he's at. Diego Fagundes and his contract, situation is going to be something that the LA Galaxy get to figure out at the end of this year, right? So he has a contract through 2025. You're able to sort of keep him, then you have an option for 2026 if you want him in there. With what Mark Delgado, I think, was demanding, and it's still expected he's going to sign multi-year extension with LAFC, then it gets harder. You lose some of your flexibility. Doesn't mean it's not the right or wrong call. I'm just saying it's always not as simple as people want to make it. And so we try to provide that information as much as possible. So, yeah, I mean, the LA Galaxy are rocking a hard place now, Alex. I didn't think we'd be here after having a season like last year. And we spent half of last year trying to figure out whether or not the Galaxy were good or not.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're watching right now, look at me right there at MLS Cup. Who would have thought that 6 months later, I'd be talking about an LA Galaxy team that is last place and that is not won a game yet. But yeah, it's every time I think about it out loud and I talk to you or any other reporter about it or just anybody in general, like I'm just, dumbfounded of just the entire situation because, I think Galaxy fans wanted to enjoy and relish, being on top
right.
When last year everyone was kind of questioning it.
Yes.
And, every day it was kind of like, are we, is this team really legit? Is this team really, MLS Cup contenders? You win the whole darn thing and then now you're not anymore. And, the standings prove that. So it's, it's so confusing to me, but everyone in this team from, who we've talked to, they want to get better. They still have the desire to be able to kind of have that championship swagger. And right now, given their injuries, they just aren't able to kind of, get that again.
Yeah. I am, in terms of results, if the Galaxy win this game, this is all about emotions at this point. For me, Alex, it's all about emotions because the Galaxy are emotionally fragile at the moment. If they allow the first goal, the game's over. I can always see them. I can always see them like kind of trying to have this reaction and scoring a goal, and we've certainly seen that. But I just don't feel like they will have the power in them, the emotional power to play from behind. They've seen it too many times. It's just going to be like, and here we go again, right? That's 100% because that's what everybody thought whenever the Galaxy allowed that own goal in the 13th minute against Sporting Kansas City. Like, here we go again, and the Galaxy went and dominated that game. And Greg Vanney was talking and saying, maybe they should have had 6 goals in that game, which he's probably not wrong, right? In a lot of ways, but they're emotionally fragile. So if the Galaxy were to win this game, it's going to be because they score first. And that doesn't mean they score right away. It could be 0-0. As long as the game is neutral, Alex, I feel like the LA Galaxy will at least have a chance at it. But as soon as they start, if it starts to come, if they start scoring goals, if New York starts to put the pressure on them, if the Galaxy don't have solutions for the pressure that they know is coming, and certainly with the younger kids, there's going to be a lot of pressure coming. New York's out for blood. They want the revenge for that MLS Cup loss. And by the way, it doesn't really it's not the same. Just because you would beat them in the regular season doesn't mean you get to go take the cup, right? So the Galaxy will gladly take that trade. I'm just saying that for me, they need to score first, and they've only done that once this year in all of their games.
Yeah, and again, you're coming off a game where you didn't allow the opponent to have a single shot, so it's not like this is a defensive issue at the moment, right? I think I've brought up before when you have McCarthy, Nelson, Garces, Yoshida, and Yamane starting, right? That team prior to the SKC match was undefeated. And against SKC, the loss wasn't their fault. They played a very sound game. They didn't allow them to do anything at all. So, it's just about being able to kind of put everything together from the defensive side, to the midfield where we know the Red Bulls are going to want to press, where they're going to want to win balls deep within the LA Galaxy's half, and then transitioning to the attack where we've seen those movements, where they're getting the ball into good spaces, where they're able to kind of create opportunities. You just need to finish them.
Yeah.
And it's going to be up to Christian Ramirez. It's going to be up to, Marco Reus if he's in those positions. If it's Cuevas or Aude that, are moving higher up the pitch, it's going to be up to one of those guys to be able to have that finish. And somebody needs to provide that moment, provide that spark. Because right now it's the defense that I think is doing its best to hold up. Now that you have that entire back line healthy, it's just about can that attack, give the LA Galaxy the advantage that they have. Because I think you said they've been leading a game for 60 minutes all year long? Around that, 64 minutes?
62 minutes.
Well, there you go, right?
Yes.
You need to be able to score goals because right now the back line is as healthy as it's ever been, and it's been pretty decent the last couple of games. Now that you have like I mentioned, Nelson, Garces, Yoshida, Yamane, and McCarthy back there.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, prediction guaranteed to be wrong, Mr. Alex. What do you have for this game?
I think I'm gonna go with the 2-1 loss for the LA Galaxy. That's kind of just where I'm at right now. We saw them lose a game where they didn't allow a shot.
Right.
I feel like, maybe this game you get an own goal with a shot off the crossbar that hits John McCarthy's back and into the net.
Right.
At this point, they're finding different ways to lose. I think the Galaxy are going to score. I think somehow they're going to just be able to, whether it's the no tactics free zone, right, or maybe early in the game where they capitalize on some chaos in the box. I think the Galaxy will get on goal, but New York being at home, kind of having that revenge factor, having Forsberg and Choupo-Moting, who are very quality attackers, I think that's going to be able to give the Red Bulls the edge over the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I think that there will probably be a little more chaos on the field than we expect just because of the changes that are going to be made. So that leads me to believe New York scores an early goal, right? It's going to be one of those within the first 12, 15 minutes that I could see. So I see that. And by the way, I'm sticking with it. I will not pick the LA Galaxy to win until they prove they can win because we haven't seen it. So I want to see what a win looks like. By the way, it's at the point, Alex, where I expect the LA Galaxy to play horribly and somehow get 3 points. It doesn't have to be pretty. Nothing has to be perfect. Greg Vanney talking about how, he feels like the calls have been going against him, and I think they have. But also, this team is a little emotionally fragile, and they want to win. Every single one of these guys want to win. If they could win, Alex, it could have massive repercussions for the rest of the season. Because I don't think this team is bad, so I think they can win games. In fact, I expect them to win games. I just don't trust them until they do. So waiting to see that. The LA Galaxy will take on the New York Red Bulls coming up at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Coast time. It's 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that game coming up on this weekend. So it should be a really fun game to watch. Saturday, May 10th, 4:30 p.m. Kickoff about 4:40 p.m. That game on MLS Season Pass, Apple TV Plus, and then EA Sports FC Mobile as well. So you can find it on all those places and do it. All right, Alex, anything else you want to get to before we get out of here? You can stop holding your breath now. Like you've been holding still for the whole entire podcast. You can move around now, or you're just gonna stay stoic, right?
I think I'm going to enjoy the MLS Cup. The memories of this LA Galaxy team being dominant, good, and being killers. But yeah, nothing to add, Josh. But yeah, the Galaxy just need to prove it, get that momentum, open up the dam. Well,
as Alex, always great to have you. I know you had some fun out at the press conference. Glad to see you asking the good questions. So keep up the good work. It's one of those unfortunate situations for everybody, as we talked about in the beginning. So keep doing that. Tell people where they can find you, Alex, and we'll get on out of here. Let's go.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, X, at AlexRuiz15, and you can also find my articles and work where I provide LA Galaxy analysis on thegalactictribune.org.
All right, go check that stuff out for Alex. If you're looking for me on any of the socials, it's at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com, youtube.com, Spotify, all those wonderful places, SoundCloud, any place you find your podcast, you can find Corner of the Galaxy. Tell your friends, tell your family. We will be back on a Monday night. Not only will we have a recap of the game that happens on Saturday against the New York Red Bulls, but we will also get you ready for the Philadelphia game that will be midweek on Wednesday. All right, that'll do it for Mr. Alex El Nino Ruiz. I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening to our little Corner of the Galaxy. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and Be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.